And we are off. Hey, everyone. Welcome. Episode 497 of the All Dolphins podcast for Monday, April 28th. I believe the days run into each other. So it is April 28th, 2 days after the end of the 2025 NFL Draft Day. And I am pleased to be joined by a special guest on this particular episode. The Dolphin community should know this dude. If you don't, let me introduce him. I'm talking about Ian Berger, Big E. He is a regular co-host on DolphinsTalk.com podcast, as well as the 2021 NFL Fan of the Year. Got the honor of announcing the Dolphins' 7th round pick that year. And if Dolphin fans want to blame somebody for the selection of running back Jared Dokes at that time, that's the guy you need to blame. How are you, Biggie?
I'm good, Alan. How are you? I will take any heat that you need to throw my way. It was still an honor to announce Jared, and I got a chance to meet him. Very humble young man, had his opportunity, and he's moving on, I think, in his life from what I've seen.
Yeah, absolutely. And you did a fabulous job in announcing him. And it was funny. One quick anecdote for me, Jared Dokes, and I had fans were like, he looked good in the preseason, and fans were like very high on his prospects. And I saw him throughout the offseason and in training camp, and the dude was fighting every pass that was coming his way. And I'm like, that is not good. He didn't make. So we're going to talk Dolphin draft, state of the Dolphins, where they stand right now. There is another reason Ian is on the show. Ian, as again, if you're a Dolphin fan, chances are you know about this, and if you don't, I certainly want to bring it out. Ian has been dealing with a medical issue for quite some time now, and there's a chance possibility, and whatever chance possibility there is that somebody out there can help, we want to certainly put it out there. So Ian, again, as I told you before we came on, however little or a lot you want to say about the situation, by all means, the floor is yours.
I appreciate this opportunity, Alan, and thank you for having me on for this. And as you mentioned, if you're on X, Twitter, or Facebook, I've been trying to share my journey as much as I can because I think it brings a lot of awareness to something that people don't know about. Real quick, last April, it's been about a year now, I started getting symptoms of what's now called primary sclerosing cholangitis, PSC. It's an autoimmune disorder of the liver, and basically it's cells killing other cells within the liver. And it's gotten to the point now where I am in stage 4 cirrhosis of the liver. And really the only reason why I'm sitting here today is because I have 2 external tubes that are coming out of my abdomen that are tied to my liver at the moment, that allow actually bile, without getting into too many details, to flow either externally or internally into the appropriate spots. But with this, it actually creates scenarios where I randomly get fevers. I randomly get what's called cholangitis, which is where my stomach gets bloated. It basically results in me going to the hospital. And I say since September, I have been hospitalized on 6 separate occasions and probably over 40 days inside the hospital. And, I hate being there, but I'll tell you, University of Miami doctors, nurses do a tremendous job of trying to figure out what's going on, try to help me, and then try and also get me home, because really I'd much rather be at home than anywhere else. But I've shared my story, and ultimately what it has boiled down to is that there's 2 options for me. One is through a deceased donor, a cadaver donor. People say that I'll be a donor if I pass away. Or the second option is through a live living donor. And unfortunately, with the deceased donor, you have to be so sick that you can probably not get out of your bed, right? So I'm trying to avoid that, and that's why I'm going the live liver donor route. I mean, ultimately, I need a piece of somebody's liver. It doesn't have to be the full liver, because actually livers regrow in humans. A lot of people don't realize that. So I'm looking for someone who matches with the blood. I'm an A positive from a blood perspective, someone who's healthy enough, because going through being a liver donor requires you to go through a pretty hefty surgery. Usually requires about 3 to 4 weeks of getting yourself well, even though it would take me about 3 months to get myself well once I receive that donor. And it also has to take place up in Pennsylvania. So like all of those things have to take place in order for it to happen. But I cannot thank the support that you're providing, allowing me to have this platform today, DolphinsTalk.com, as you mentioned, they've been sharing a bunch of stuff. All of the people on social media who have basically said, we can't help for one reason or another, but we'll share it. Or we tried to help, but unfortunately we're not, we're too old, based on what they say the requirements are. Yeah, exactly. Or they've had some sort of health situation themselves and they're not able to help. But, ultimately we've had a bunch of people that have signed up, that have tried to sign up, that they can't make it to the next phase in the process for one reason or another. So really heartfelt thank you to everybody who's been able to help out, because ultimately I just need one person that meets all the criteria, that has the right size, because that's the other thing. You need to be at least 80% of the size of my liver in order for it to regrow appropriately. And then, again, thank you to everyone too has made it to the third phase, and they're just waiting, because right now what I found out is that University of Pennsylvania actually, they look at 2 people at a time. And then out of those 2 people, they look at the best fit. So they'll have one person, then they'll bring up the next person. And then they'll look at those 2 head to head and say, who's the best fit? And so this process continues to go on and go on and go on until they find really what the perfect fit is in their opinion. So that's kind of where I am. And, like I said, a lot of love to you, a lot of love to my family who's really been enduring with me during this process. Also friends who've tried to help out as much as they can too. I think there's a lot of people that have offered to help, that have tried to help, and for one reason or another, they're not able to. But just the fact that they're thinking about it, just the fact that they're applying for it, really makes a difference for me. And it, sometimes I sit at home and wonder why I've been lucky enough to have this type of support. And all I can do is say thank you.
Well, it also speaks to the kind of person you are. If you were not a generally good guy, chances are you wouldn't be getting the support you're getting. So, I don't know you. We don't know each other very well, but the limited interactions that we've had, you're a good dude. Without, I say that unequivocally, without any reservation. Is there a place specific, if somebody were able or thinking about potentially donating part of their liver? Is there a place where they need to go, or how would they go about doing that?
So it's actually a website, and it's through believe it or not, it's called the National Kidney Registration, or National Kidney Registry, but they have also created a registry for liver donors as well. And I have created what's called a microsite, which gives all the detail. There is a spot where it says, see if you can help Ian. And that's where you go. That's where you start out the process. It says, see if you're qualified to donate. And that's the first phase of the process. And then if you pass that phase and they take you on, and it's actually UPenn doctors that will help you through the next phases of the process. And what's good about this, and I know it might sound crazy, but I don't know who's applying. I don't know medical history. I don't know anything about they really keep these 2 phases very separate, who the donor is and who the person is they know who's going to receive the donor, but I don't know who those people are, because they don't want anyone to pressure anyone else. Mm-hmm. Like, if someone wants to do this, it's because they're inclined to do it. I can't go out and say, I'll give you $1,000 if you do that. They right. really are very strict, and they ask you like 6 or 7 times throughout the process as a donor, has there been any pressure? Has there been any monetary value? And I'm happy that they do that, because people really want to help is the reason why they go and they follow through with this process.
Okay. And later on, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the URL link to the website for those who might be inclined to, who are thinking about donating. And then you guys can take it from there. Ian, we see Ian wearing the t-shirt and the hat. Ian's a big fan.
You're a big fan of the Expos too, by the way, because I always see you with your hat.
I am. I Expos first, and then also I'm a fan of displaced franchises. I have a soft spot in my heart for those cities that have lost teams.
You're a Browns fan then?
It's wrong. No, well, they got a team back, so no, they got it. But
got it.
Seattle Supersonics,
I gotcha.
Hartford Whalers, those types of teams. You're, as we get into a little bit of Dolphins talk here, your overall feelings on this Dolphins draft.
I'm going to say it's kind of mixed. And the reason why I say that is you really don't know what you get until you see him on the field. I think that's first and foremost, and I kind of have my ear to the ground with all of the analysts, and you've got some analysts who say this is a great draft because, X, Y, Z. And then you've got other people who are just generally negative about anything that Chris Grier does. And they're saying this was a horrible draft. Right. But what I like about it is, they built through the trenches, and you don't tend to see the Dolphins pick up an offensive lineman and a defensive tackle in the first couple of rounds. And not only did they pick up some guys, they picked up some big boys, and that's something we don't tend to see, like the big boys that can just change like the trajectory of where people are going. And I kind of like that, but I think I saw some tape on all these guys. I looked just to see some highlights, and I liked what I saw. Like even when you look deep into the draft and you look at the running back that they picked up, round 6, Ali, he's somebody who I thought, at 3rd and 2, you give him the ball and he's going to get you that first down, which is something that we have been lacking for the last couple of seasons, I feel. Or we've been lacking since Lusaka Polite, right? You knew that if you gave Lusaka Polite the ball, he was going to get the first down. But the other thing too, when I saw his video, unfortunately, it also reminded me of a little of Kalen Ballage, because that's what we thought Kalen Ballage was going to do. He was a big body guy, right? He had that one great run in against the Minnesota Vikings after halftime. But I saw some similarities there. So again, you cannot assess these guys until they're on the field. They've got the pads on, they're playing against NFL teams. But I like the upside potential for some of these guys. And I also like that, the majority of them, they haven't been injured. Like I said, the majority of them, there's, I think, 1 or 2 guys that was injured prior, but, they tended to be a little healthy. And, Quinn Ewers, I think a lot of people are like, there's a lot of upside to him.
Hold on.
But again, he's picked up in the 7th round.
Hold on. Let me jump in and then we'll go back. Because I want to say this about Ollie Gordon. And you mentioned Kalen Ballage, which is a great reference. And Kalen Ballage, by the way, I don't know if you're aware, but if you read Miami Dolphins on SI.com,
he's doing well.
He had the one big run and that was it. He had he set a record for the longest run in UFL history. I think it was 74 yards. And last I had checked, he had done nothing else since then. But Kalen Ballage was a guy, and he had a game where he had like 8 touchdowns at Arizona State. But he was a big guy, but it was more like a semi-finesse running back than he was a bruiser. And the same, I'll give you another name that was kind of like that, was Daniel Thomas. And Daniel Thomas, drafted him 6'2", 230, and you check out his Kansas State highlights, and it's him hurdling players. And I'm like, well, doesn't fit the mold. And you look at Ollie Gordon highlights, it's more him bruising, running over people. Well, he's breaking tackles. And the one thing, the Dolphin offensive line took a lot of slack last year for its poor performance, particularly in short yardage situations, which is true. Dolphins running backs also were terrible at breaking tackles last year. So this is where Gordon really could help.
Yep.
Okay,
I was just going to say, I see Devon Achane as the number 1. I do see the gentleman we picked up last season as well, Jalen Wright. Is that correct? Jalen Wright as the second. I think the 2 of them can be on the field at the same time. And then I think of the 3rd down, you could end up seeing Ollie Gordon. But then, as I was mentioning, we picked up a quarterback in the 7th round. Who knows? Upside potential is there, but I don't, again, you've got some people who automatically do not like Tua for one reason or another that say this kid is going to be better than Tua. But I thought I heard the same thing about Skylar Thompson. So we'll see if he develops into anything. I think the big question mark is going to be, can Tua stay on the field for 17 games this season? And if not, do we have the firepower behind him to be able to win games, which we clearly did not have last season. And I don't know if Quinn's going to be able to be part of that or not. And then, you got some other guys too. Jordan Phillips, we had a Jordan Phillips, didn't do as well with us as he did with Buffalo, if I remember correctly. And then Dante Trader. Here's what I liked is that we had some holes. We filled those holes. Are these guys going to be starters day one? Well, you hope the first 2 guys are, going to be the starters, the offensive lineman, the defensive tackle. Everybody else, there's going to be big question marks if they're going to be able to contribute from day one. But that's what happens when you give up. What did they give up? The 3rd and 4th round picks, if I remember correctly. And They picked up a 3rd round pick for next season, and you pick up later in the draft. So unless they saw some real good value and they got some really good coaching, I'm kind of concerned about, are we going to be able to plug and play some of these other guys? Who knows?
Yeah, I personally wanted volume in this draft, and Dolphins went from having 4 picks in rounds 2, 3, and 4 to having 1 after that trade with the Raiders. The flip side to that is, and I wrote about this today on the website, MiamiDolphinsOnTheSide.com, where all the content is free and there's lots of it, so check it out, that the Patriots, per 2 different writers in New England, were debating at the start of day 2 between the guy they wound up picking, which was Ohio State running back TreVeyon Henderson, or our friend Jonah Savainea.
Yes, I saw that. I did actually see that.
So, and this notion that the Dolphins could have stayed at 48 because there was no other offensive lineman taken, that makes 0 sense. There was no other offensive lineman taken because there was a guard. Actually, it was turned out to be offensive lineman, but there was a clear gap once you reach the end of tier 1, and Jonah was the end of tier 1. So the Dolphins, if they were going to get that guard who they wanted so much, they were going to have to make that trade. So that's one side of it. The other side of it, again, that kills the volume, though, aspect of the draft. So who knows?
All I know is I was sitting at dinner, and when the trade was announced with my wife, and we were at a restaurant because we weren't expected to pick for at least another, 45 minutes. So we were kind of wrapping up, and I see the trade on the TV, and then, they announced Jonah's pick, and my wife says, so he's going to be protecting Tua, right? And I said, yeah, he's going to be protecting Tua. She's like, then I'm happy, because the guy needs to be protected. If he's protected, he has the ability to do really good things, as long as he's not running outside of the pocket and going and sliding head first. That's but the challenge there is, and this is what I've been telling folks, is that I feel like it's inherent with him. No matter how many times you tell him, slide feet first, don't try and get the extra yard. We'd rather you be healthy for the next 10 games than be knocked out for the next 3. Unfortunately, I think it's a competitive nature in his brain that he says, I'm going to try and get this at all costs, which is why he had hip problems at the end of the last year. Again, trying to get an extra yard or 2. If he can get that in his head, I think he can be on the field more. And if he's on the field more, I think he can be successful. We saw that 2 seasons ago. The man's got an arm. The man's got accuracy. But, we'll see.
He's got accuracy, yes. He's got accuracy. I don't know if he's got an arm. He's got 2 arms, actually. I don't know if he's got a strong arm, but he is very accurate, and he has been very productive at times. The one that, to me, one of the most problematic comments in the season, full of problematic comments, was, if you recall this, after the Rams game, after he threw the pick, went in low for the tackle on the linebacker on the return, then he does his weekly press conference, and he talked about how he's learned his lesson. He's not going to do that again. And against Houston, he scrambled, got Jonnu in the flat, doesn't throw the ball to Jonnu, instead runs into the open field and gets sideswiped by Mario Edwards Jr. and gets the hip injury. It's like, dude, get it through a thick skull. You cannot do that. One point I want to make about Quinn Ewers and this notion that the Dolphins may have struck gold. And I did this yesterday. There were 14 quarterbacks there were 14 teams in the NFL. The starting quarterbacks out of those 14, 12 first-round picks, 1 second-round pick, Jalen Hurts, and 1 third-round pick, Russell Wilson. During the regular season, the main quarterbacks out of every team in the NFL, it's basically nothing but first or second-round picks. You had Gardner Minshew out of the Raiders, and you saw how that worked out for them, and Brock Purdy, who's the one outlier that people want to keep pointing to, and even with him, how good is he really, or is he just in a really, really favorable system?
Good system, yeah. So, you're right.
I don't know. So this notion that you can get a stud quarterback, because of Brock Purdy and because of Tom Brady, 25 years ago? If Quinn Ewers develops into a better backup than Skylar Thompson, that I will consider that a hit as a pick.
Agreed, especially as a 6th-round draft pick, right? And the only way you're going to know if he's a hit or not is if he needs a 7th round. Sorry, you're right. The only way you're going to know if he's a hit is if he needs to be on the field, which hopefully we never actually have to see him on the field, right? But I guess we'll see.
well, if he's on the field, it better be, well, it wouldn't be good, but it better be because of a Zach Wilson injury as opposed to he beat him out. Because if he beat him out, that means that you wound up flubbing on your backup quarterback again, which would not be good. So, and this is the same thing also with rookie free agents. I see a lot of fans going crazy, and I see some writers too, while Dolphins really nailed their rookie free agent class. Again, call me an old fogey, a hater, whatever. They're rookie free agents for a reason. And yes, the Dolphins have had a lot of rookie free agents make the roster in the past, say, 10 years. But A, is that a reflection on the bottom of the roster that rookie free agents can make it and the lack of good draft picks? And how many of those guys really become, at the very least, average NFL performers? I would say maybe your best one is Kader Kohu. Preston Williams in the first half of his rookie year before he tore his ACL and was never the same guy. And outside of that, I mean, Robert Jones started a lot of games, and fans were always looking to replace him. So
it's a hit or miss, but I think the names are there. And again, when you start looking at films, I was watching somebody today who was with Boise State, and I think he was a safety, I think, in Boise State, and I was like, all right, this film looks good, but who's with this Boise State really playing at that time, right? You start asking those types of questions. And the thing is that they didn't get drafted for a reason, right? There's something there. They're maybe not at that level. Listen, I want these guys to make it, right? Because that means that they fought hard. They showed what they needed to show during the preseason, during training camp. But like you said, a lot of these guys are probably going to be training camp guys at the end of the day. Unless they get their opportunity. And I like who they got. I liked what I saw on film, but they've got to beat out who these other supposed starters and backups are going to be on the roster. And that's not easy. That's not easy in the NFL, because coaches are only going to give you a very small portion of opportunities during training camp. And like you said, with Jared Dokes, unfortunately, I saw Jared fumbling the ball during training camp. He never really found holes in training camp. He had a couple. I think he had that one really good preseason game, but that was the last game of the preseason, where I think the Dolphins were going up against the third string players for the other team. So, it wasn't really against the top tier talent.
Correct. And I remember, I'll give you another running back name that is obscure now. Wasn't obscure when he came in, because I remember a lot of fans were telling me, keep an eye on this guy. That guy's going to be good. He was a South Carolina running back by the name of Zaquandre White. And to me, immediately my question was like, okay, if he's so good, why didn't he get drafted? And generally speaking, like, I'd have to go back, because now I'm curious, as I raised that question now, how was it that Kader didn't get drafted? Maybe because he played at Texas A&M Commerce and there was lack of competition issue. Preston Williams, why he wasn't drafted is because he had off the field issues that led to him from going from Tennessee to Colorado State. So I don't think there was a major issue of talent there. But generally speaking, guys don't get drafted. Like the new one, Anthony Armstrong, wide receiver from Arkansas, was part of this year's class. And I will emphasize again, these are guys who have agreed to terms. They don't sign until they come down for the rookie minicamp, pass their physical. Then you'll see the Dolphins announce the signings on the first day of the minicamp. But for now, they have agreed to terms. And I see a lot of folks being like really high on this guy. And I'm like, okay, then why didn't he get drafted? And I have a draft expert friend of mine who was like, oh, I really like this guy. And then he watched some tape of him and like, okay, I get it now. There's no yak. Like he's got great mitts, but he catches the ball and that's it. Okay.
Or no separation for one reason or another, and unfortunately, like Xavier Restrepo, he had a bad. He looked great for the Hurricanes, but he had a really bad combine, right? Or not combine, but pro day in Miami, where they timed him, and I think a lot of people got scared with that. Now I hope he does great, but again, too, he's part of that undrafted rookie class. Fortunately, he's going to a team that his starting quarterback joined, so there's some immediate connection right there, but. You just don't know what he's going to look like on an NFL field. There's a difference between, number 5 University of Miami going up against an unranked team. They're going to put up 70 points versus, NFL teams where everything's within 7 to 14 points usually within a game. And I think that's the difference.
Yeah. And Restrepo is a guy, if you watch him in college, is like he got a really nice feel for the game and he knows how to get open, but he gets to the NFL, that's not going to be enough. And unfortunately, he's short and he's not fast. So generally speaking, you don't see a whole lot of players with that kind of combination. I think like Devon Best wasn't the tallest, biggest guy in the world, and he wasn't necessarily that fast. He's another one who, my Lord, was he good at running routes and getting open. But I think he was slightly bigger and slightly faster than Restrepo is. So anyway, we don't want to spend too much time on Restrepo. As you look at the team right now, just overall after this draft, what's your level of optimism as we stand right now, understanding that Jalen Ramsey's probably on his way out the door, as far as competing in the AFC East in 2025?
I think that there's a lot more questions than answers at the moment. And I don't think those questions are going to be responded to until we see them on the field, until we see the full team being built out and we figure out what's happening with Jalen Ramsey. I do know
that's what's happening with Jalen Ramsey.
Yeah, well, exactly. And I know that there was a report out there that said that they may be able to reconcile. And then I saw what Armando wrote, that there is no reconciliation possible between the Dolphins and him. But with him being gone, who are they going to pick up in free agency? And I know a lot of these guys that have stuck around, they've stuck around for a reason as well. I think the average quarterback age right now is about 32, 33. So you got guys that are older, but with that being said too, you've just now gotten younger on the defensive line side. You're going to have Chop Robinson come back. Chubb's going to be back. So is Jalen Phillips going to be back. So if you put pressure at the front, it's going to make life a little bit easier, regardless of who you got on the back end, right? I think that's kind of the theory I'm going at. So that's why I don't think all is lost. I think, there's a lot of free agents that we're going to end up picking up. But I think with that type of mentality, I think that might be what the Dolphins are looking at right now, to say, hey, if we could put pressure on the quarterback, if we could sack the quarterback more frequently based on, our stunts or whatever we're going to be doing on the defensive line side, I think we got a chance. Offensive side, they have proven that they can put a lot of points up against teams. But that question is going to be answered based on, is Tua going to remain healthy or not? And that's it. I'm not worried as much about the offensive side. I actually, when you look at the offensive line, I see a youth movement on the offensive line, which is something we haven't really done, but there's still question marks about health. There's question marks about, is Teron Armstead's spot going to be filled appropriately, right? Because when Teron was on, you basically didn't have to worry about that. But I think there's a lot of questions. I'm always optimistic, Alan. I can always say that it's not going to be as bad as Flores' first season. It's definitely not, because I think we have more talent right now than what we had then. But I think that a lot of Dolphins fans right now say this does not look like a playoff team at the moment. But if they get on the field and things start clicking and the talent is there and some things happen that are unexpected, I think the Dolphins can make it into the postseason. Just my opinion.
Okay. We'll find out. I don't know how optimistic I would be right now. There are a lot of good teams in the AFC, and I'm not coming at it from a fan perspective, but absolutely, I like the positive attitude. That's going to wrap it up before we go. And please like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Check out my written content on MiamiDolphinsOnSI.com. My good friend Ian, any final words, any reminder about, again, what folks can do if they want to help?
Yeah. So again, I'm going to, I'll give you the website to be able to go to review. And if somebody wants to see the story, and if somebody feels inclined that they want to check it out to see if they're eligible, I would be whoever it is that ends up being that person. And I'm very hopeful that we will find someone. I'll be indebted for them for life, because ultimately I think, my liver needs to be replaced. And a year from now, 2 years from now, I don't know how how healthy I'm going to be based on what I'm doing today, which is every month going to the hospital. So, if I can give that live liver donation, it really ultimately is going to save my life, in my opinion. So I will give you the website. It's nkr.org, and then there's some numbers in the background. But if you go to nkr.org, you can actually search for Ian Berger. My name is on the screen, and you'll see my microsite there. But I'll give you the information, Alan, so that you can share it as well.
Sounds good. I will put it in the comments. So that's going to wrap it up. Thanks, Ian, for joining me. Gang, that's going to do it for today. We're going to be back on Wednesday. Thanks, and have a great rest of your Monday.
Fins up, everybody.